Hi everybody, this is Liam Martin from Running Road, and in this video we're going to be talking about an employer of record. That is fundamentally a third-party organization that hires and pays an employee on behalf of another company and takes responsibilities for all formal employment tasks. That sounded like a very legal definition of what an EOR is, which is exactly what it was. We're going to be reviewing EORs. I thought, man, this is gonna be a little bit weird because I know a lot of these guys. Some of them are really interesting people and they're some of the first remote pioneers that really entered this market. But if you don't know what an EOR is, you're gonna learn that in this video. If you don't know which EOR to choose, hopefully I'm gonna actually be able to help you out in this video. Let's go. So using an EOR allows companies to legally and efficiently engage with overseas workers, either in a new country or state, without having to set up a local entity or risk violating local employment laws. Let me give you an example of how an EOR might be valuable to you. I had a possible client, and that client had an employee located in an Eastern European country, and that country had a unique feature, which was if you were a contractor in that country, you actually owned all of the intellectual property that you made for that other corporation. So when the company wanted to go and get acquired, they actually had to say, hey, can you hand over all of this IP, intellectual property, to the mother corporation? The employee lawyered up and he said, no problem, as long as you give me a $500,000 bonus. And they had to, and it really sucked for them. That's an example of what you need to be able to do. You do not know the local employment laws of different countries. And if you're in 3, 6, 12, 20, 40 different countries all over the world, it's critically important that you understand all those laws, particularly if you're raising money or if you're gonna get acquired, any of those types of things. It's super, super important. And then long-term, actually, I think that a lot of countries are going to start to recognize that this is a source of income from them that they're not really tapping on. And I think very soon you're going to see probably a lot of interesting conflicts and legal cases pop up where country one says, hey, I think you actually owe me a whole bunch of payroll taxes for these people that worked inside of your company for 6 months in a particular country. That's effectively what an EOR is. It protects you from all those things, or it's supposed to. So we're gonna be able to get into all of the details connected to that and what they actually do. So here's what EORs should generally be handling in these types of services. No one we've actually seen actually handles all of them, but most EORs handle most of them, if that makes sense. So hopefully it does. Number 1, processing and funding payroll. Number 2, depositing and filing taxes for the employee and also your local jurisdiction. Handling workers' compensation, collecting and processing timesheets, creating and maintaining employment contracts, employee onboarding, maintaining certificate of insurance, doing background checks and drug screenings, terminating employees. From a legal perspective, you should have to actually fire them or you'll look like a huge dick. Basically, an employer of record is a cost-effective way to outsource payroll and HR functions. It's also an efficient way to actually overcome employment requirements for non-resident companies doing business in different countries. So there is no reason to risk violating labor, tax, and employment regulations when there is an EOR solution available in almost any country in comparison to the old school way of doing it, which was effectively setting up subsidiaries and having long-term contractor agreements. So if you're thinking of hiring an EOR company, you might want to ask yourself several questions. Number 1, has the EOR worked with companies similar to yours so they are capable of understanding your particular needs? Like, are you a startup? Are you a multinational corporation? You got to figure that stuff out. Number 2, what is the EOR's service history and performance record? Again, these guys, I mean, it's payroll kind of mixed with like a law firm because you're dealing with all of these different jurisdictions. So service history and performance record is really important. Number 3, do you need other services or do you just need an EOR only? We're going to get into that later in this video. Number 4, how are their fees and rates set? And what is the timing cycle for invoicing and payments? Take a note about the difference between an EOR and a PEO company. That's a professional employer organization, which is kind of like an outsourcing company that primarily focuses on providing HR service support. PEOs don't show up on any of the employee records they solely exist to assist in taking over the client's human resources department. Honestly, some EORs call themselves PEOs and some PEOs call themselves EORs. It's a bit of a screw up if you ask me, to be completely honest with you, and we're splitting hairs. But regardless, I prefer the term EOR, so by the power of Grayskull, I'm just going to call them EORs, even though some of them might want to be called PEOs. So here are some of the companies that we recommend at Running Remote. Full disclaimer, most of the companies that I mention in this video are either sponsored or participated at our events as speakers. So I have a good understanding of the quality of their services. Also, some of the remote work angel funds that I'm invested in also invested in some of these companies. So I wanted to disclose my bias beforehand. However, somebody actually wrote these particular reviews for me, so my opinions are not actually my own, but a magical script fairy and 2 research monkeys. So take it all with a grain of salt, people. Also, outsale.co has a great post on this as well that Brett from there sent me over. So I'd go check them out as well. It was a fantastic source of resource for me in putting together this piece, or more specifically, the people that wrote the script for me. Let's go. I gotta get my coffee out for this one because it's gonna be a long one. Strap in. Shield Geo. Shield Geo is now part of Velocity Global. So they merged or were acquired, I'm not exactly sure. And yet, honestly, they still stay very true to their services. They will handle everything from local payroll to tax compliance to a bunch of other EOR Plus type of services. They've also been in business for years, and again, they recently merged into Velocity Global. Definitely, this is a great choice if you're looking for boutique services, and they are a remote first company as well. So that's a really important factor. Some of these EORs and PEOs are not necessarily remote first organizations. They work in an office, but yet they supply services to remote workers, which just seems a little weird to me. But those guys, they eat their own dog food, and they're really nice guys. I've hung out with them a couple times. Next one is Globalization Partners. Globalization Partners has in-country teams ready to delegate anytime. They have a full-on end-to-end control over their services. There's no hassle or delays when it comes down to their operation of their business. They have on offer professional services and a lot of stuff that's more than just payroll. I'd really kind of call them payroll plus a law firm personally, and I think I actually did interview the CEO of the company, and that's what she told me. I'd personally consider them the market leader when it comes to EOR services. I believe they raised about 150 million in an interview we did with them less than a year ago. They said that they were doing over $1 billion in turnover per year. It's probably much more now. They have been in the game almost the longest out of any of the companies that I'm mentioning here. They started in 2012. They're definitely a company that I would personally take a look at because they're gonna offer you not just the basic EOR services, but they're gonna offer you much more complicated services on top of that, which is if you've got a couple employees, they're probably not the right person for you. But if you've got to deal with multiple countries, like 6, 12, 20 plus countries, they're probably really good at understanding the unique situations that you need to be able to address inside of those companies, as opposed to like a self-serve model, which we're also going to get into in this video. Next one on the docket is remote.com. Remote specialized in HR, payroll, and benefits for remote first teams. Their platform is the first global employee API that allows small and big businesses to connect their employees and payroll data across the whole HR stack. So literally, it's like their job is to plug into your existing HR stack so that you're not out of Bamboo or Gusto or whatever it might be. Their goal is to literally integrate themselves inside of your stack that already exists. The thing we like about them is instead of third-party entities, like i.e. some partner pays another partner to run your payroll in a particular country, remote.com is focusing all its energy on first-party entities. So that means all the subsidiaries that Remote works with are their own. This is much more complicated for them in the short term, but it will probably mean easier services and functionality and costing in the long term. They also raised a bucket load of money at almost $200 million from the last that we saw. Also, Job, who founded it, was employee number 5 at GitLab, so he knows remote very well, and he's definitely a remote first dude. Check them out, particularly if you've got a really complicated technology stack and you have the engineers to be able to do that integration. Remote is probably a really good direction for you. Next one is Deal.com, and that is spelt D-E-E-L, and it's .com. That's one of the newest companies in the space, and I think they're almost 4 years old, but they've also raised over $600 million. They focus all their energy on contractors and making those contractors compliant. Unlike the companies that I've mentioned above, they focused on contractors first and then went in the direction of full-time new hires instead of doing it in reverse, which is what most of the other companies do. They've raised a lot of money and probably have the most gas in their tank, but we'd also like to prefer to see more first-party entities as opposed to integrating with partners for payments and compliance. However, if you're primarily focused on contractors versus full-time hires, I'd probably think about going there first versus some of the other companies mentioned that focus more on full-time hires. Also, their UI is pretty fantastic from what I've seen. I saw it about 2.5 years ago. I actually had a very interesting call with them, and they seem like great guys. They're also YC alumni as well, if that means anything. Next up is Oyster HR. If you are running a startup business, Oyster HR may be the one for you. They literally got founded, I think, a month before the pandemic started in the chat that I had with them, and they already raised $75 million. Did I mention that this space is actually red hot? Because it is absolutely exploding. There's money just flying throughout the EOR space, which makes it quite exciting for me to be able to watch on the sidelines. One approach I like about these guys is they're actually taking a quasi-freemium approach with their free plan that lasts for a year. So you can already access their most basic functionality for $0. That may actually be the smartest strategy, as there are so many people building up their capacity in this space. The product-led marketing approach that they're taking may be the only way to actually make it work and really crack into this market into a meaningful way. The free plan includes 2 contractors, perfect for firms that are just starting to venture out of their local talent pool. If you're a startup, honestly, I'd start there. I'd at least check it out and look at it in comparison to some of the other companies that I've mentioned above. Next one is remoteteam.com. Remote Team is an all-in-one operating system that supports companies with HR services in 200+ countries. They handle global payroll, PEO, and EOR services, tax compliance, IC contracts, and HR apps, and they started in 2019, and they literally got acquired by Gusto in 2021. So congrats to Sahin on getting acquired. I actually think you're probably going to see a lot of the large payroll platforms acquire more EORs in the next year or two once they recognize how many workers will be remaining remote and out of the country. But when I played with the platform in 2020, it was super cool. It literally integrated everything. So I'd highly suggest you check it out. And obviously, if you're using Gusto, you should probably be using remoteteam.com. Next one is Canadian Payroll Services, CPR, which works on the Canadian market, as you can obviously guess from their name. With their help, you can hire remote Canadian workers from anywhere without setting up a local entity or registering with the CRA. And for those of you that are not Canadian, that is the Canadian Revenue Agency, who I give hundreds of thousands of dollars to. They take care of all of the hiring needs, onboarding, and payroll processing that you would need to do in Canada. I know a lot of you are probably not Canadian, but if you are, then this is probably the first stop shop for you. Or if you are hiring Canadians, this is probably the first stop shop for you. So check them out. Next one is Safeguard Global. Safeguard Global enables organizations to get workforce data insights before exploring a new market. They have an impressive network of over 179 countries. They will handle both payroll and HR issues, and I actually think they are officially the oldest EOR, being founded in 2008, if I understand it correctly. My biggest concern is most of those 179 countries are third-party entities versus first-party entities, which is what I mentioned above. So if you're truly remote in dozens of different different countries, you can probably get really good coverage, but you may pay a bit more. From what I heard, they have 11 first-party entities as of right now, and they're looking to probably expand that, or I'd assume they're probably looking to expand that. The game is literally going to be who gets there first, so who builds the most first-party EORs, or sorry, first-party entities inside of their EOR will probably be the company that ends up winning everything, but it's incredibly complicated because it's literally bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy, which obviously you don't want any part of. You literally just want to hire talent. So EORs are a super easy decision if you're in that space. If you have people in a lot of different countries, Safeguard and globalization partners, and possibly Papaya, which I didn't really mention here, are the place to probably be. If you use something like Gusto, definitely go with remote teams. If you're more on the tech startup side, I'd go with remote.com. Again, they got that cool API, or Oyster, they have that free plan. Or if you're really in deep with contractors, deal.com is probably the spot for you. Or you can just keep doing what you're doing and possibly get sued by multiple countries for payroll taxes. You do you. Totally up to you. Did I miss any EORs in this list? I know I did, because I didn't actually have enough info on them to comment on them seriously, and I didn't want to make myself sound like a complete idiot. But if you have any of them, please put them down in the comments below, and I'd love to know if you use EORs or not in the comments down below as well. Also, would you like to meet some of these EORs in person? If so, I highly suggest you comment down below as well, because the top 5 comments will be in our raffle for a free ticket to the Running Remote conference, where all the EORs hang out, and me. Maybe that doesn't impact your decision making too much. Also, while you're down there, why don't you subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this video? It is indeed free, and we talk about remote work, nerd stuff all day long. See you in the next video.